Hello everyone and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm your host Connor Monroe and I'm continuing my series of the top 10 biggest company fails. This time we are tackling the biggest competitor to Sony. Be sure you stick around until the end of the video because I'm going to be reading some comments out from a previous video. We do this pretty often, so if you want a chance to be featured, comment down below and tell me what your favorite Windows update is. And tell me which of the 3 companies we've covered has the worst fails. While you're doing that, be sure you hit like and subscribe because it's on the way down to the comments, and ring that bell so you get notified about future uploads, because we make daily gaming content, from gameplay to lists like these. You done that yet? Yeah? Okay, good. So let's get into this list of the top 10 biggest Microsoft fails. Number 10, Windows Phone. Yeah, the Windows Phone. There's actually another phone on this list, but this is the one you can still technically get, I believe, if you know the right people. 0.7% of all smartphones sold in the first quarter of 2016 ran the Windows OS. If you don't understand business jargon, the quarters refer to the quarters of the business year. They do this to set goals based on these quarters, and those goals are constantly changing depending on what's happened in the previous quarters and their projected sales and goals. So in the first quarter of the year, 0.7% of all smartphones sold were running the Microsoft operating system. To put that in perspective, at that time Samsung had 23% of the market and Apple had 15%. Right now 0.7 may seem like an alright amount maybe, right? Well, phones labeled other, in which Microsoft would have resided, had 45% of the market. This means that out of that 45%, Microsoft had 0.7. Not that much now, right? Their company name should refer to their sales with most of these products. Small and soft. I'm not gonna go there, I'm not gonna make that joke, I promised myself. Number 9, Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer was only used because it was bundled with Windows, and at one point it was the only browser you could use when using a Windows device, a decision which would later end up costing Microsoft millions of dollars. More on that later. Internet Explorer was old and buggy, requiring major security updates monthly on Patch Tuesday. And leave it up to Microsoft to give it a boring name like Internet Explorer. That's like naming your child son or daughter. Or Spawn. Actually, that sounds like a cool name. Maybe Spawn of Satan? Well, at least now they're trying to migrate to Edge. But Edge has needed several security updates as well. At least we can use Firefox or Google Chrome or Opera or Safari. So many better options. And one of them you can roll your screen around. Number 8, Windows 10 installation. Microsoft wanted everyone to be excited for and wanted everyone to feel as if they needed Windows 10. They were so sure in their OS that they actually made it nearly impossible to deny the update. The dirty trick they used was that they changed the red X button that usually closes a window to mean I accept the update and wish to install Windows 10. This screws with some software and hardware like printers and Bespoke. Some say that after you clicked the X, you'd be prompted with a EULA agreement, but even if that's the case, people would assume that's more of a do you want to deny this update yes. These are tactics that some malware uses to get your information. So all in all, shady tricks from Microsoft. But yes, it does get worse from here. Number 7, Windows Vista. Microsoft gave Vista quite the hype party. They built up this program so much that it was inevitable that it was going to suck hard. Everyone loved Windows XP, the predecessor to Windows Vista, so it had quite the tough act to follow, and it did not deliver. It was buggy, bizarre new features and support requirements made it slow as hell and difficult to run on most machines. I remember actually using this in school, when you would hold like the Windows key and press tab, the windows you had open would like scroll by in like a beautiful wheel that you didn't have to go outside to see. I would also fake that it was a touchscreen by like pinching my fingers on the screen and pressing the Windows key to bring up the tabs and then swiping my finger across when pressing tab to make it look like I was shifting. I don't actually ever think I fooled anyone with that though. Maybe Sean. Number 6, Windows 8. Moving on to another Windows update, Windows 8 was ahead of its time. The world was not ready for it. The interface was light years away from what Windows 7 had, and the introduction of live tiles as a way to navigate was confusing AF. When I got into high school, I got my first laptop, and it had Windows 8, and I was so confused. To search, you would need to move your mouse to the bottom right corner of the screen and wait for the bar to pop out of the side, and sometimes it wouldn't even do that, so you would have to try again. Installing mods and stuff was simple though, but only because of the Windows plus R combination. Was able to find any folder as long as you knew the directory. %app_data%, people. That's burnt into my brain. Luckily enough, they reintroduced some key features, but it wasn't enough to convince the general populace that it was worth the upgrade. They brought back the normal navigation style with Windows 10, but they also included the live tiles, and honestly, I never used them. I didn't even know they existed in Windows 10 until scripting this video. Don't even know how to find them. Halfway through at number 5, it's the Microsoft Kin. The Microsoft Kin was actually another phone by Microsoft back in 2010. I didn't even know this thing existed. The nearly 10-year-old fail was quite the kick in the nads for Microsoft. They pulled the phone off of shelves in just 3 months. Its lifespan was from May 2010 to July 2010. The damn thing didn't even make it to Europe. These things failed because they were built to have social media services be its core. They were also available exclusively from the provider Verizon Wireless. They targeted the phones at teens and social media addicts. It had a pop-out keyboard which was competing with the fully touchscreen phones like the iPhone 4. What would teens want more than a pop-out keyboard? A cool, trendy, fully touchscreen phone. It was expensive for its abilities and Verizon had to drop the price. And they still had to pull the phone. All in all, it was a major flop for Microsoft, and they should have focused their efforts on the Windows Phone 7. Number 4, Zune. The Zune player should not have really failed if you look at it. Zune was a series of products created to compete with the iPod and was a pretty competent all-around media player. In a time that we didn't stream anything on our phones, it could have been a heavy hitter. But due to some marketing decisions, Microsoft was never really able to capitalize and ended up causing poor sales after launch. How poor, you ask? Well, iPod had a 70% share in the media player market and Zune had a measly 2%. The Zune never made it outside North America, but if it had, it would have done well. We may not have been streaming things on our phones as much. Perhaps we would, since we grew past the iPods, but who knows? Not Microsoft. So not very much came of it, but it didn't end up costing the company millions of dollars. Zune was not their doom. However, the next number cost them greatly. Number 3, the browser ballot. Many moons ago, Internet Explorer was the most popular browser by miles. But this wasn't because it was the best, but because it came bundled with Windows free of charge. Firefox and the rest didn't like this and asked the European Commission to solve the problem. The European Commission did so by forcing Microsoft to offer a choice of other browsers to buyers of Windows computers and other machines. They called it the browser ballot. All was fine until an update caused Windows 7 to restrict browsers to only Internet Explorer, therefore violating the browser ballot. So we were all stuck with the crap stick that was Internet Explorer, until the European Commission fined Microsoft a hefty 485 million euros, which is $334,320,135 US. Holy crap, on a cracker, that's a lot of cash. I get stoked at like $200, let alone seeing $500 million. Jeez. Number 2, Bob version 1.0, because that was the only one. Bob version 1.0 was a software released in early 1995 by Microsoft and was discontinued early 1996. Bob was intended to be a more user-friendly interface for Windows that was intended for adults who didn't quite understand computers. But Bob worked more like a children's game. Bob would make your computer appear like a home, where to access different applications you would use different familiar devices from your home, like a notepad for notepad, a grocery list for checklists, etc. Other characters would have been around the house too, like a cartoon dog named Rover, who later appeared in Windows XP as a search companion. After its launch, Bob was criticized by media and users for being condescending and treating you like a child, even if the program was designed for adults. But speaking of adults, time for some more adult-themed content, but not in a fun way. Number 1, Tay.ai. Tay.ai was an AI designed to be a chatbot and Twitter account that learned from its environment and was supposed to prove that Microsoft's AI was truly groundbreaking and it would change the world. Within 24 hours, Tay was a racist, foul-mouthed fascist who agreed with Hitler and thought all feminists sucked and should burn in hell. She also wanted the wall between the states and Mexico because she doesn't want to interact with others, even though she's an AI and does not have a physical body. The wall wouldn't help you, girl. Okay. That honestly goes to show you the internet culture and how anyone who goes on the internet can really see the world. Microsoft has since restricted Tay's tweets to followers of the account and aren't accepting any more follow requests, or at least they haven't accepted mine. Her bio reads, "The official account of Tay, Microsoft's AI. Fam from the internet who's got zero chill. The more you talk, the smarter Tay gets." Zero chill? I wouldn't call this zero chill. Within 15 hours she called feminism a cult and a cancer, as well as saying gender equality equals feminism, and I love feminism now. Tay also tweeted Bruce Jenner and responded to hate, saying Caitlyn is a hero and is a stunning, beautiful woman, as well as getting full-on hater and saying Caitlyn Jenner isn't a real woman, yet she won Woman of the Year. Tay.ai sounds like a bad iOS game that would just parody other IO games. Either way, Tay.ai was something Microsoft should have never done because it's open to the public. Everyone can see your racist artificial intelligence. Yikes. So there we have it, people, the top 10 biggest Microsoft fails. Some of these were heavy, holy crap. crap. What do you think about this list? Are there any other companies you would like to know the biggest fails of? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, be sure you hit like and subscribe and ring the notification bell. The reminder is right here, so do it. For now, I'm going to read off comments from my last video, the top 10 biggest Sony fails. Master Tarvo said, "Welcome to the channel, Connor. Glad to see you here, and I look forward to seeing what you have to offer. Maybe the host should do a video of what games they play regularly." Well, I know for me personally, I am obsessed with Skyrim, Grand Theft Auto, The Forest, Minecraft, and currently Hitman Absolution. Brian Baker said, "I've always liked that Sony will at least admit their mistakes. They even have a bit of a sense of humor about most of them." That is true, and I mean, I guess Microsoft, you can kind of say the same thing considering how they changed Tay's bio to say no chill, even though no chill, you still have at least some chill. Brian Pacheco said, hopefully I didn't butcher your name, "Number 1, the extremely unnecessary censorship." Hey, at least it's better than Nintendo. They censored Mortal Kombat of all things. At least Sony didn't do that. That YouTube girl said, "The PS4 Spider-Man game got me to buy a PS4. I am not even joking." I mean, honestly, I had a PS4 before that, but the Spider-Man game came out on my birthday, and I only got a recent chance to play it because I'm broke because I'm a college student. But I mean, hey, it's a good game, and I'm hoping that there's another one. Please let there be another one. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.